the title of my message is Activate Your Faith. With an exclamation mark, your faith. So to make it very clear, I want to start by addressing the common misconceptions about faith. Faith is not transactional. We do not exercise faith so that we can manipulate a blessing from God. God, I have faith in you, so can you bless me financially? God, I have faith in you, can you make me pass my exams that I didn't study for? Faith is not reckless or blind. As long as I have faith, I don't need to think I can do anything that I want. Proverbs 15:21, I love this. It says, foolishness is joy to him who is without heart and lacks intelligent common sense. But a man of understanding walks uprightly, making his course straight. So we still need wisdom. Avoid taking unnecessary risks that might end up harming you or others around you. Faith is not absence of doubt. I have faith, therefore there is no room for doubts, or there is no doubts at all. Having faith doesn't mean having no doubts. Having faith is about overcoming doubts. And last, faith is not without works. I only need to have faith and then God will do the work. James 2:26, it says, the very moment you separate body and spirit, you end up with a corpse. Separate faith and works, and you get the same thing, a corpse. So we got to put our faith into actions. In fact, there are a lot of work to be done. All right, now we are clear of what faith isn't, so what is faith? Hebrews 11:1, it says, faith is the reality of what we hope for, the proof of what we don't see. So this is the key definition to understand the rest of the message, and I want to invite everyone to read it together with a little bit of gusto, right? So 1, 2, 3. Faith is the reality of what we hope for, the proof of what we don't see. So in simple sense, faith is believing what you hope for will come to pass. And most of us here, we have this mindset that faith is believing that God can do something to the situations around us so that we can get what we want. So on a surface level, I would say, yes, it could happen. But often we do not realize that faith changes us more internally than it is our external environment. Faith grows us, preparing our hearts, our character, our attitude to be ready for the future we hope for. So peak performance psychologist research shows that there are actually 4 zones when it comes to human learning and personal growth. And they are comfort zone, fear zone, learning zone, and growth zone. And faith is actually the black line you see on the diagram, okay? It brings you out of your comfort zone, a space where you feel comfortable, safe, everything's in control, towards our growth zone, where we step into a better future, the future we hope for, our dreams, our aspirations, and also a space where God can move powerfully. So today we're going to learn about how to activate our faith and what we can do in each of these zones so that we can truly grow with God. And my first point is, number 1, dare to believe. Daring to believe is the first step to take to activate our faith and move us out of our comfort zone. So we're going to visit a moment in the Bible when a woman activated her faith to believe for healing. So Mark 5:25. A woman who had suffered a condition of hemorrhaging for 12 years. A long succession of physicians had treated her badly, taking all her money and leaving her worse off than before, had heard about Jesus. So she slipped in from behind and touched his robe. She was thinking to herself, if I can put a finger on his robe, I can get well. And the moment she did it, the flow of blood dried up. She could feel the change and knew her plague was over and done with. At the same moment, Jesus felt energy discharging from him. He turned around to the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? His disciples, it was quite funny, the disciples said, what are you talking about? With this crowd pushing and jostling you, you're asking who touched me? Dozens have touched you. But he went on asking, looking around to see who had done it. The woman, knowing what had happened, knowing she was the one, stepped up in fear and trembling, knelt before him, gave him the whole story. Jesus said to her, daughter, you took a risk of faith and now you are healed and whole. Live well, live blessed, be healed of a plague. So listen, this woman's situation is bad. First, she suffered from a condition where she bleeds uncontrollably. And she lived with this condition for 12 years of her life. Second, she spent all her money on treatments from many doctors, but nothing had helped. And in fact, her condition had gotten worse. And third, at a moment in time, the Jewish law declared her to be ceremonially unclean, which means that she's not allowed to step into the temple for any Jewish religious ceremonies. And on top of that, anyone she touches will be deemed unclean as well. So for 12 years of her life, she experienced physical pain from a condition and also emotional stress, as she is likely to be outcasted from her community. So the woman is desperate for a healing. And all she can do is to have faith for healing to happen. And when the opportunity arises, when she heard about Jesus, she dared to have faith. She dared to believe that as long as she can put one finger on Jesus' robe, she is able to get well. And I'm sure she has lots of doubt along the way. What if the healing doesn't happen? What if the crowd decides to call me out because I broke the law? But she decides to give her all to make this healing happen. Activating our faith requires us to be fully engaged, to give our all. All energy, all focus and attention, surrendering all our fears to God and overcoming all our doubts. And to muster all courage and say, I dare to believe. So, recently, I learned something interesting about our human brain, which is there's this thing called the reticular activating system, RAS in short. So it is like a net-like formation of nerve cells and their connection lying deep within the brainstem that connects our brain between the brain and our spinal cords. So what the RAS does is that it takes what you choose to focus on and it creates a filter that only allows relevant information through from our subconsciousness into our conscious minds. And in doing so, it influences our behaviors and our next course of actions. So here's what's interesting. So more than just focus, the RAS seeks information that validates our beliefs. It filters the world through the parameters we give it, and our beliefs shapes those parameters. So for example, if we believe or we think that we are bad at giving speeches, we probably will be. If we believe we work efficiently and true, we most likely will do. And if we believe in positive thinking, we'll be more attuned to positive news. Likewise, if we believe in our doubts and our fears, we'll be more attuned to negative news. So just recall with me, right, your first time learning how to ride a bicycle. And you tell yourself, I cannot ride a bicycle. What happens is that your RAS will cause you to pay attention to the things that will cause you to fall. You become hyper aware of that small little pebble on the road, whether you are balancing yourself well, whether you'll crash into the person who is like 50 meters ahead of you. But when you start to change your belief to, I'm going to ride this bicycle and I can do it, your RAS will cause you to pay attention to the things that will help you to ride. Your focus on your balance becomes more intuitive, not focusing on whether you'll fall. You'll begin to pay attention to whether you are pedaling enough to gain enough speed. You pay less attention to the person who is 50 meters away who will cause no danger to you. Your body will begin to act towards your belief, and you'll soon be able to ride a bicycle. So, activating your faith is the same. By saying, I dare to believe, you are conditioning your mind and body to pay attention to the things that matter and to act towards it effectively when we are fully engaged. So one of the focus in TiVo this year is growth, right? And this has been in the heart of everyone in the Youth CG Y0. So I remember at the start of the year, we all wanted to believe that this year we can really grow and make a difference in our friends' lives. We dared to believe that growth is possible, and we gave our all. We went out to make new friends, had multiple outings, and we prayed a lot. And during Easter, our faith broke through. And we have many people like Ashley, Darius, Riley, Aishu, Vivian, Samuel invited many of their friends. And we had a total of 24 friends who joined us over at Easter, and many of them were really open to connect to God and the community. Awesome. And that's not it. Ever since Easter, we had friends joining us for gathering every single week. And some of you are even sitting here today. And I'm just so excited about our future because it's filled with love and faith in our team. And I'm amazed by, youth, I'm amazed by your faith and taking the step to believe together. So for all the youths here, if you want to start having faith for your friends, for God to move in your schools, you need to give your all. your time, your focus, your energy, your resources. Muster all your courage and dare to believe that it is possible. And for our adults here, if you want to start having faith for your future, then you also need to give your all. Now, it sounds like having faith requires us to put in a lot of effort, yes? Giving our all should make us feel uneasy and uncomfortable. Faith should make us feel uncomfortable because it moves us out of the comfort zone. Had the woman decided to stay in her comfort zone and chose not to believe, not to have faith, she would have never experienced the healing that she so desperately needs. So just to push this a little bit more, right? So daring to believe is only the first step to activate our faith. Some of us, we might end up full of faith, which is great, right? You feel motivated, excited, ready to conquer. I would say, go forth, act in your faith. But some of us here might end up with what we call the little faith. You just feel a 1 degree shift in your perspective. From this is impossible to this might actually be possible. And if that is you, I want to speak to you that this 1 degree change is all you need. Matthew 17:20, because you have little faith, Jesus said, I assure you that if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, go from here to there, and it will go. There will be nothing that you can't do. Isn't this powerful? We all just need that little faith, that 1 degree change to see that the impossible can be possible. The woman thought to herself, if only I can put 1 finger on Jesus' robe, there's a chance I could be healed. So sitting here, if we say we want to live a life filled with faith, will we take the first step to dare to believe? Dare to believe for growth to happen in your teams. Dare to believe that God is able to provide in your life, financially or in relationships. Dare to believe that God can make the impossible possible. So turn to your friends here, sitting beside you, look them in the eye, stare into their soul, and tell them, I dare to believe. Turn to the other person and say, I'm going to have faith. Awesome. Okay, this is the minimum volume, okay? Minimum. So, the woman had faith, right? Like, Jesus is here. I'm going to touch his robe. I'm going to get healed. All is good. All is planned, right? But when she arrives, this is the situation that she's facing. Verse 24. The whole crowd tagging along, pushing and jostling Jesus. There is a war of people between her and Jesus. So the woman's faith moved her out of her comfort zone, and now she steps into the fear zone. Which brings me to my second point. In your fear zone, learn to be tenacious. So when we enter the fear zone, we need to choose our response. To be tenacious and continue to believe, or back down and retreat back into our comfort zone. You see, there are far too many times where I see people start off excited, right? I'm daring to believe, I'm filled with faith, but when they encounter their first obstacle, their faith crumbles. Doubts and fear starts to creep in. You go like, oh no, this is bad. Maybe it cannot be done. It isn't possible. They retreat back into their comfort zone and they stop trying it altogether. Friend, the only way to move past this zone is to be tenacious in your faith. To hold firm to what you believe in. To stand firm in your faith. James 1:3, it says, after all, you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. So we teach in TiVo about being tenacious in our faith, especially in our prayers. And we have learned this over in MT, this acronym called PUSH. Pray until something happens. And it is something that all leaders, we remember by heart and we still practice today. And there are countless of stories about people being tenacious in their faith and they broke through. And I remember one of it is how as a community we prayed tenaciously for our current premise. So I remember in 2015, right, we kind of outgrew our previous premise in Jalan Pemimpin and we needed to move to a bigger venue. And we had a few requirements for our new premise. So the first one is it must be accessible, right? It must be near the MRT, preferably more than one. Number 2, it must be presentable. So that our new friends and parents especially are impressed and assured to send their children here. So just some context, right? Our JP premise was located in the middle of like an industrial area. So it could be dangerous with heavy vehicles moving in and out, and the building also looks very rundown. Number 3, we were mainly used back then, and so we had limited finances, so we need the rent to be below $12,000. And of course, there were a few other requirements on the screen. And if you look at them hard enough, you realize it's going to be very hard, right? Especially a place that is accessible, presentable, and cheap. It's almost impossible to find in Singapore. But CGN leaders decided to believe that it is possible. For 6 months, I remember we had multiple prayer meetings in our teams, before gathering, overnight prayer meeting, phone prayer. We prayed and we prayed and we prayed and prayed, and we never gave up. And the team behind moving out, consisting of Regina, Winnie, Tzuhan, and CJ, and a few others, were constantly going out to find suitable premises, which most did not fit our requirements, but we kept going at it. And it was in September 2015, after one of the gatherings, CJ received a phone call that our current premise was available. And to our very surprise, whatever we prayed for on the list was ticked. And we moved in a few months later, and here we are. Awesome. So I'm really thankful for everyone who stuck by, to keep praying, to keep believing. Had we chosen to give up midway and tell ourselves maybe it's impossible, we wouldn't have been able to get this promise, and many of us wouldn't be sitting here today. So you see, tenacious faith turns hope into reality. For the members here, perhaps God has put in your heart a dream to rise up, to serve, to lead. You believed, but once you take the first step to try, you encounter many, many obstacles, self-doubts, fear starts to creep in. I'm not good enough, this might not be for me. But today, if you say you want to move forward, not backward, then you got to grow a tenacious faith. A faith that never gives up, that you can hold firm to regardless the situations and circumstances. Tenacious faith that will change your "it might happen" to "it will happen." And for our new friends here, perhaps you have certain aspirations about the future, but you stop progressing because of finances or your parents or friends telling you that your dreams and aspirations isn't practical. And you start to tell yourself, maybe they're right, maybe I should give up on my dreams. And if that is you, and I want to say to you to live towards the future that you hope for, and not stay in your comfort zone, then you got to be tenacious. Don't give up. Find ways to overcome the obstacles. Tell yourself, it can be done, it is possible. So to move out of our fear zone, we got to be tenacious in our faith. So turn to your friends beside you and say, we got to be tenacious. Awesome. So just a small caveat, okay? So while it sounds all motivating, exciting, right? I want to give everyone a reality check. So it doesn't mean once you are tenacious or have tenacious faith, you'll always succeed. Or you'll always get what you want. So I love this quote from one of my favorite soccer managers. So he says, giving absolutely everything doesn't mean you get anything, but it's the only chance to get something. So here's a thought for you to sit on. Being tenacious doesn't guarantee success, but it scores you a chance to achieve success. So I don't know about you, but for me, this chance is worth fighting for. Will you be willing to fight for it, even if you might fail? Which brings me to my next point. Number 3, embrace failures and disappointments. So we move from our comfort zone to our fear zone, and move past our fear zone. Now we are going into our learning zone. It is very easy to learn when we succeed, right? We are happy that we made it. But it is difficult when we fail. We feel disappointed. And for most of us, it throws us back into our fear zone or our comfort zone. Now, I tried, I failed, maybe this isn't it. For some of us, we take it to the extreme. We blame God for our failures. Right? You see, I knew it. I failed. God wasn't there. Oh, what's the point of having faith in the first place? Right? What's the point of trying so hard? But I want to encourage you today, failures and feeling disappointed are part of progress. It is part of your faith journey towards growth. So let's take a look at the moment in Mark again. And apart from the woman, there is another character in the Mark passage, and his name is Jairus. So as we read it, I want you to put yourself into Jairus' shoes and to see this story in his perspective, all right? Ready? So Mark 5:21, after Jesus crossed over by boat, a large crowd met him at the seaside. One of the meeting place leaders named Jairus came. When he saw Jesus, he fell to his knees beside him and he begged, My dear daughter is at death's door. Come and lay hands on her so she will get well and live. Jesus went with him, the whole crowd tagging along, pushing and jostling him. So Jesus was on the way to save your loved one, right? But look what happened next. A woman, okay, it's a familiar story, right? A woman who had suffered a condition of hemorrhaging for 12 years had heard about Jesus. She slipped in from behind and touched his robe. She was thinking to herself, if I can put a finger on his robe, I can get well. The moment she did it, the flow of blood dried up. She could feel the change and knew her plague was over and done with. At the same moment, Jesus felt energy discharging from him. He turned around to the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? Okay, just remember you are Jairus, okay? You are witnessing this situation. His disciples said, what are you talking about? With this crowd pushing and jostling you, you're asking, who touched me? Jesus doesn't have touched you. But Jesus went on asking, looking around to see who had done it. The woman, knowing what had happened, knowing she was the one, stepped out in fear and trembling, knelt before him and gave him the whole story. And then Jesus had a conversation with her. Daughter, you took a risk of faith, and now you are healed and whole. Live well, live blessed, be healed of your plague. And notice the next line. While he was still talking, some people came from the leader's house and told Jairus, your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore? It's kind of absurd, right? Now, if you put yourself in Jairus' shoes, your daughter is literally dying by the minute. You finally got Jesus' attention and he's on his way to save her. And along the way, there's a crowd slowing Jesus' progress. So it's like, you're running late for work or for school, right? Then you take Grab already, but then there's a jam on the road. Some of us, you can feel it immediately, right? We would have been so frustrated. And what's more is like now Jesus in this urgent situation stops, attended to the woman and listened to her whole story, had a nice conversation with her. Right? Some of us might say, come on, Jesus, take our time, huh? Okay, jokes aside, if I was Jairus, I would have totally put the blame on Jesus for his lack of urgency which caused my loved one to die. The mission failed. I am dead disappointed with myself, with Jesus. Now, it is interesting that the Bible did not record Jairus' response. So here's my take on what might have happened. So perhaps when Jesus stopped on his way to Jairus' house to speak to the woman in the crowd, he allowed time to pass. Jesus was not worried about Jairus' daughter dying because he knew all along he would heal her, even if that meant raising her from the dead. And perhaps when Jesus stops to care for the woman in the crowd who had reached out to him in faith, Jairus, on the other hand, who was panicking because of the urgency of his situation, learned that the woman's faith was enough to experience the healing that she believed for. Jairus learned in the moment that God's timing and purpose are not like ours. And we need to have faith in God. If the woman can experience a miracle with her faith, then I also need to have faith in God too. So listen, sometimes God requires patience from us. Sometimes God waits longer than what we think is rational. And sometimes he allows us to experience temporary loss in the forms of failures and disappointments so that God can do his works. The learning point for Jairus was to trust Jesus. And you got to understand that this is a huge thing for Jairus, considering that he had been a religious leader for most of his life. But now, Jairus has to put away his ego and learn to trust Jesus. Jairus held on to his faith and his daughter was eventually healed. So, what I want to say is, it is okay to fail. And in fact, let me break you the news if you have not realized it yet, failure is part of the package. At the end of the day, when we hold on to our faith, we begin to see that failures and disappointments are part of our faith journey. But faith enables us to see our failures as opportunities to grow. So, how we respond to failure is important. We need to respond in faith and to hold on to it. And maybe let's talk about faith at a higher level, right? When we anchor our faith only hoping for miracles to happen, we will respond badly when it doesn't. Let me say it one more time. When we anchor our faith only hoping for miracles to happen, we will respond badly when it doesn't. Instead, choose to anchor our faith in God, not the miracle. You see, what happens when we anchor our faith in the miracle is that once we fail, our faith crumbles. We fail to get what we want. But when we anchor our faith in God, God prepares us for the miracles. God grows our heart, our character, so that we are ready to receive when it comes. And I think I love about Jesus is that God is there in every part of our faith journey. He is there to encourage, to bless, to challenge us. God can turn our weariness into our source of strength. God turns our faithlessness to our fight for hope and faith. God turns our disappointments into hope for a better future with Him. So Romans 8:26, it says, meanwhile, the moment we get tired in a waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside helping us along. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. He does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our wordless sigh, our aching groans. He knows us far better than we know ourselves, knows our pregnant condition, and keeps us present before God. That's why we can be so sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good. So friends, don't dwell in your failures and disappointments. God is here with you. Be encouraged and move on. All right, so just a short recap. We said that we need to dare to believe, to be fully engaged, to step out of our comfort zone. We need to be tenacious to overcome our fear zone. We need to embrace failures and disappointments and seeing it as opportunities to grow. And finally, we reach our growth zone. Yay, happy zone. But it brings me to my last point, is that in our growth zone, we need to learn to commit to God. So this is what Jesus responds to Jairus when he was informed about the death of his daughter. Verse 36, Jesus overheard what they were talking about and said to Jairus, don't listen to them, just trust me. So while I was preparing today's message, I thought of the word trust and decided to elevate it to commit. And let me explain a little bit, all right? Trust is often conditional. Trust is given and earned through acquired knowledge that the person we are trusting is reliable. Commitment, on the other hand, can be unconditional. This is when you might not fully grasp the situation, but still you make the deliberate choice to give trust to the other party, often because of relationship. Jairus was a religious leader. He is not a follower of Jesus yet. But it doesn't make sense for Jairus to give his trust to Jesus. But Jairus decided to commit to Jesus even when the situation is bad. You see, trust is situational, but commitment is unwavering, unless, of course, one party forcibly breaks it. Another interesting thing about our relationship with God is that God is and always has been the committed party. And it's powerful how we think that human beings are the ones who are obligated to be faithful and commit to God, right? But the Bible teaches us that God is the one who initiates faithfulness, and then we reciprocate. And that's why we experience grace. Grace is the evidence of God's unwavering commitment to us. So Romans 5, it says, by entering through faith into what God has always wanted to do for us, set us right with Him, make us fit for Him, we have it all together with God because of our Master Jesus. And that's not all. We throw open our doors to God and discover at the same moment that He has already thrown open His door to us. We find ourselves standing where we always hope we might stand, out in the wide open spaces of God's grace and glory, standing tall and shouting our praise. God has made His move to commit to us. Will we be willing to make ours and commit to God? So I'm going to land now. So, committing to God is deliberately making room in our lives for God to move. Jeremiah 29:11, I know many of you know this verse. Now, I know what I'm doing. I have it all planned out, plans to take care of you, not abandon you, plans to give you the future you hope for. God has a better plan. But often we are the ones who want to be in the driver's seat. No, we want to control the situation, we want to control the results, and we leave no space for God to move. Or some of us only have the idea that we have faith and we do our best on our part. Then God will also do his part to get what we want. We begin to fit God into a formula, right? Just like 1 + 1, our one effort and God's one effort, we just want it to be 2, nothing more. But we often fail to realize that God's playing field is different from ours. Our God is an infinite God. He is capable of anything, and he always wants the good for us. So instead of having faith that goes, I give my best and have faith, God, you also give your best so that I can get what I want only, we need to be open to the possibilities of God's work in our life. Far more than we can ever imagine or hope for. And when we begin to do that, we are elevating ourselves to God's level of playing field. 1 + 1 is no longer 2. We define math a little bit. But 3, 30, 300, 3,000, we begin to receive much more than we set out to hope for. So you see, for the woman, she wasn't just healed for her condition. She was restored in her dignity. She was made whole, complete. And imagine with me, when she was healed, she must have been so happy, right? She no longer suffered in pain. She could have just walked away joyfully. But Jesus had to call her out because Jesus knew the healing wasn't complete. The woman still had 12 years of indignity. Being constantly shunned by others, Jesus wanted to restore her identity. The woman was unseen. No one knows her by name, not even in the Bible, other than the label of the unclean woman for 12 years. But now she's completely restored and seen. For Jairus, he must have been so much despair when Jesus attended to the woman. But Jairus learned that God's timing and purpose are not like ours. Of course, Jairus' daughter was brought back to life, but Jairus also grew in his humility and his faith for God's timing. Jairus committed and gained a relationship with Jesus. So you see, often we pitch ourselves in a finite situation, right? We think God can only operate like us. Jesus can only choose to heal the woman who's suffering for 12 years or to attend to a 12-year-old child. But we got to know that God's power is greater than that. God is able to do far more exceedingly and abundantly outside of our control. He can do both and much more. And all we got to do is to activate our faith and choose to commit to him.